obviously this, COVID-19 is not going to completely destroy the Hollywood industry. It's going to start up again at some point. Are you hearing any timelines from anybody? Are people starting to pinpoint months where production may begin again, or projects that they may start with, or anything that is sort of positive forward thinking in the Hollywood industry right now?
Right. What I can tell you is that from multiple sources that we talk to routinely, the studios are telling places like the agencies and talent that they anticipate 8 weeks to start again. Okay. Which I don't know if that's an optimistic number. I don't know if that's a precise number. We'll have to see. But they're saying 2 months. That means productions will have to go at the top of June. The one that we're sort of looking at now is Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. That should be on track to start on time if everything is okay. And then another fascinating part of this too is that when you've got top movie stars, you get yourself into a bit of a scheduling nightmare. So take, for instance, the movie Red Notice. That's a Netflix original. That's well over, I think the package is well over $120 million to shoot. That's Dwayne Johnson, Ryan Reynolds, and Gal Gadot. That was in the middle of production and shut down, and they need to come back on that. Now, both Dwayne and Ryan Reynolds have projects they need to do by September. I believe Dwayne has to start on Black Adam, which is his Marvel, or is that a Marvel property? It's a superhero property at New Line. But he has commitments. He's in the middle of the shoot for Red Notice. So if they can't go back for 2 months, then I imagine that would mean Black Adam has to push its start date. So you're looking at, again, another set of domino effect with future productions. But I think that would be a happy problem to have at this point. Let's get people out of the house and back to work.
Exactly. Are you seeing any areas where people are working? Earlier in the show, you said editing is kind of getting up and running. Are we seeing visual effects teams getting put on jobs, or where are you seeing it?
Yes, actually, it's a lot of it's in post. Voice. I know a few voice actors personally who have been set up at home, which is encouraging. A lot of animation people have started to figure out how to get this done. Which, by the way, isn't cheap. I know one person who had a $60,000 bay installed in their basement, and they're terrified to have it in the house.
Wow.
So that's getting done. And then, yes, the effects houses are figuring out a workflow where people can work from home, so that finished films can maybe get polished and released at some point, and hopefully by the end of 2020. But yeah, it's mostly post. I mean, everybody else. The other place where I think work is being done is in development. So you've got people who are, executives, development executives, creative showrunners sitting at home, probably working on their next project or identifying what they want to do the second that we get, the green light to come back to society.
Yeah.
So I think that when we come back, you'll see a flurry of announcements about people that want to start, and then maybe how that could possibly happen. But we'll just have to wait and see.
Do you think that there's going to be any lasting effects of what happened here with coronavirus? Do you think Hollywood production is going to change in some way to almost be more prepared for something in the future?
I mean, I hope preparedness will be, will be one of the side effects of this pandemic. But I think in terms of practicality, one thing I've been hearing a lot of this week is that a lot of the casting people have been sort of insisting on and relying on self-tape from actors, where you basically just film your audition and submit it as opposed to coming in person.
Yeah.
And a lot of the casting people I've spoken to fear and some sort of celebrate that this is going to become the norm, that in-person auditions will basically cease. And perhaps the same for table reads. I don't know that you can prepare for something like this. Or maybe just perhaps maybe tighter schedules, which isn't good for anybody.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, yeah, you certainly can't. I guess you can't fully prepare for something that's completely unprecedented. But I'm wondering if there are things in the workflow, in like you said, maybe shorter schedules, or an emphasis on voice actors and post-production houses being able to work more remotely. Like those things, it could be one of those things where some of these changes are implemented during COVID-19, and then people say, you know what, I kind of like this workflow. I kind of think this can work. Like. I'm curious to see how the dust settles. Right.
And actually, to that point, I think one thing that everyone's realizing is and a smaller part of the story that's not as relevant right now is that piracy is a huge deal, right?
Yeah.
So one of the other reasons that the studios would consider maybe putting movies abroad, like Fast 9, one of the reasons that maybe Universal would consider putting that online for a $30 price point is because if people want the movie, they're going to find a way to pirate it, right?
Yeah.
If it's out in some territories and not in others, so that becomes a concern. In terms of production workflow, when you've got people who are handling, incredibly sensitive assets, really, really in-demand movies, all that footage lives in the studio, right? Wow. All that workflow lives inside the vault of the studio. If they have to, I think what people are learning to do is refine and sort of deploy advanced security systems so people can download these sort of precious these precious production assets and work on them from home. So I think that that's a sort of wake-up call that Hollywood needs to find a better digital way to produce.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and something that for sure is going to happen. It's like all these things, you're bringing up all these things that I didn't even think about, just privacy and the piracy, it just the movie theater effects. Like this touches so many people, so many industries. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
It can make you dizzy if you think about how many tentacles this has. But the one thing I will say though, specifically about theaters, is that at some point, the box office may be down, but it's still billions in revenue, right?
Yeah.
At some point, when it is safe to return, I'm sure a lot of filmmakers would tell you that the idea behind what they do, and a lot of artisans and craftspeople and crew members, the reason they do what they do is because they want it to be seen by a shared audience. Yep. So I'm sure that you're going to see a massive campaign full of A-list filmmakers and movie stars encouraging people to come back to the movies. Even in China right now, if you can believe it, they're reopening some of the cinemas. And they're planning on opening more across the country because they did a phenomenal job at controlling the disease. They're lining up this bench of incredible movies, not just Chinese language, but English language, beloved hits of cinema treasures to sort of celebrate the idea of going to the movies. And I think you can absolutely see that being replicated here. So there will be, the medium has its protectors, you know what I mean? So it's not all a streaming game, but I think everyone definitely has to work smarter.
Can you talk to me a little bit about how film festivals are dealing with coronavirus? And I mean, are some getting canceled? Are things getting postponed? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, this has been a sort of devastating blow to the festival circuit because you have to realize that, festivals, number one, are obviously massive gatherings of people in small theaters watching movies. And then there's also sort of a microeconomy around that of, a sales market for indie films. There's a ton of parties and brand activations. We at Variety do talent portrait and interview studios at most of these things. It's a very highly tactile sort of event. But also festivals have their place in the awards ecosystem, right? So movies like Parasite, that opened in Cannes last year in May, won the Palme d'Or, and then got a head start running off to Best Picture.
Yeah.
So they're very fragile things. But yes, Cannes has yet to cancel. And we believe it's because something in their insurance policy, the government would have to mandate a shutdown of the festival in order for the entire operation not to go belly up.
Okay.
So that's in some version of that. So that's why they've yet to cancel. But yeah, that's been moved. South by Southwest has increasingly built a really exciting program of films. And they had to cancel in the 11th hour. Yeah. They canceled 5 days before people were meant to premiere there, which is another, and also South by Southwest does a lot of really experimental and up and coming programming. So you're looking at directors who need critical and audience reception to launch their films, to get them sold and to build their own careers. So yeah, it's been kind of a bummer. But the good news is if we can get past this, Toronto is coming up in September, as is the Telluride Film Festival in Colorado. And I think that those two things could be really big bright spots, right? Where people are coming together to celebrate. And a lot of the movies that were meant to play in these canceled festivals will get their chance. And among those movies are the new Wes Anderson, The French Dispatch, with Tilda Swinton and Timothée Chalamet. Yeah. And there's a new Sofia Coppola that many people are excited about called On the Rocks. It's another Bill Murray movie that also has Rashida Jones, and that's an Apple TV Plus release. So I think that we'll, if we can get to September and we're allowed to congregate, that'll be a great moment.
Well, there's so much going on right now in Hollywood. It's a constantly ever-changing thing. And I think it's good to hear from you that people have, although production has stopped, creativity hasn't. People are still
Yes.
active. People are still figuring out what to do next. There's a lot of discussions going on about what the next step is, and I love hearing it. That's encouraging to me.